believe one of the most valuable resources that we have at our disposal are old people. I know that's really hard for young people to understand, to digest that fact. And in fact, the truth is today, modern quote unquote old people are usually considered to be people that are in their 40s, and in that demographic and in the culture that we live in today, those people have lost the wisdom and the guidance, the ability to accurately lead. I'm talking about the real old people, the real old school grandmothers and grandpas that a lot of us that are older have come to know and a lot of times take for granted. And for me, even though I didn't understand it at the time, one of the most profound people that made an impact, an influence in my life was my grandmother. My grandmother wasn't like most women. She was a gangster, man. She was honest. She was a warrior for the God that she served. And she was really honest with me about women. And she tried really, really hard to protect me against the things that were going to be a problem in my life. But as I've said on many occasions, this channel isn't about concentrating on women or what they do or any of that shit, because I think that once you get a hold of yourself as a man, as a real man, then those things seem to work themselves out. At a minimum, you are able to dissect and go through the bullshit a little bit cleaner and avoid most of those things. But the biggest lessons that my grandmother taught me, the things that left the biggest, deepest scars, had nothing to do with the women. In fact, they had nothing to do with the women whatsoever. It had to do with what we're dealing with today. You see, my grandmother was a very, very religious woman, and when she came across something that she could latch on to, she submersed herself in it. And when I was living with her, she was a Jehovah's Witness. Now, I don't prescribe to their belief system whatsoever, but anytime that I'm looking into anything, anytime I'm especially forced to do any sort of research or reading, I try to understand what I'm reading. And while I don't subscribe to the belief systems the ideology that they hold, there were some fundamental structural parts of what they taught that were impactful. Now, when I was a young man, for whatever reason, I was a young man, when I was a little boy, I was fascinated with World War II. And I got my hands on a Time Life. There was a set of books, and I got the one with the Nazi stuff. I was fascinated with the Germans, their technology, the strategy, all of that. For whatever reason, as a little boy, I was fascinated by what they did, what the Axis powers did, in particular the Germans. And I remember immersing myself in everything that I could get. I didn't understand what Hitler's ideology was or any of that shit. They didn't really go into detail about what happened there. It just told a very vanilla story that could be read to kids. It was a Time Life series, so they couldn't be real honest about what was going on there. So I was fascinated by it, and I became really familiar with Blitzkrieg, the tactics, the uniforms, just the flow, the swag that they had. So this particular day, we were studying one of the publications, and I remember to this day this moment because it was polarizing in my soul. I remember looking at these books, The Watchtower and the Wake, And it was talking about the New World Order, the system that these evil people wanted to bring about. And this was going to be toward the end of the world. This was going to be the culmination. These things would take place, and then revelation would set off. And in the New World Order in these magazines, what it looked like to me was the Gestapo in the streets of America. And I remember telling my grandmother, this looks like Nazis. And she said, Roger that. That's exactly what it's going to be like, but it's going to be worse. And I remember listening to that and looking at the book and thinking, there's no way that what happened there could happen in America. And I even said it out loud. I said, this can't happen here. We've got the Constitution. We've got all of these things that I was learning at school that was going to protect us from this happening. I told my grandmother, this cannot happen. And she looked me in my eyes and she told me, not only will this happen, it's going to happen in your lifetime. You're going to see all of this come to pass. And I remember going to bed that night and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep because I started trying to imagine what it would be like for the things that the people that were in Germany, the things that they experienced, the atrocities that were committed in the name of freedom and protection and safety. What would that feel like? What would that look like if it happened in America? And I remember going to school the next day with no sleep, and I was really, really troubled about this. And I went to talk to a teacher, and he gave me another book. It was a history teacher. It was another book about what happened in Germany. And it was a different tale. It was even more frightening. And that was 35 years ago. The terrifying part about what I saw and what my grandmother told me and what I thought could never ever happen is not only it's not only happening, it is happening at a accelerated rate. I understand why they've worked so hard to destroy masculinity in this country. Because weak boys grow up to be weak men. And we have a nation of simps. We have a nation of men who put value in things that have no value. And as we bicker amongst one another about who is going to be the next puppet in charge of this so-called free country, more and more of our rights are being whittled away, and men are silent. Men are complicit. And what's terrifying to me is when you are a free-thinking, true free American, and you go out into society, you see the numbers, you see the people who will be calling the SS to get you sent to the gulag. I went to Hobby Lobby the other day, and the thought crossed my mind as I walked through the aisles, looking at all the sheep with their mask on, staring at me like I was the weirdo. It occurred to me in that moment that if and when this fight that's coming to our country comes to be, I was looking at the odds that I'm facing, the odds that myself and fellow American patriots who love what this country is meant to stand for, the odds are stacked against us because so many weak, pathetic men are complicit in this because they just don't want to make any waves and they don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. They don't want to do anything to let the public opinion of them make them stand as a man. Now, if you believe that this thing is somehow going to help you by covering up your face and do, by all means, if that's what you believe and that's what you feel like you need or want to do, then by all means do it. But for a man or a woman, an elected official, to believe that they have the right to take away your freedoms, your rights as a citizen of this country, to limit the number of people you can gather with while Gavin Newsom and Nancy Pelosi do whatever the fuck they want to do, The hypocrisy is evident, and still they want to clamp down on America. They want to lock things down so you don't have any way to be independent. You don't have any way to be self-sufficient. That's what this is all about. Are we going to really stand by as men with something that's got a 99% survival rate? Are we going to allow ourselves to be lined up like cattle to be injected with something that they have no clinical trials for? We already know what they want to do. They're not even being secretive about it anymore. They're not even bothering lying about it anymore. They want to take away everything from everyone so that everyone's got to be dependent on the state. And the state's not your state. It's not this country. It's the one world government that these people feel like they're entitled to impose on us. And as we sit complicitly waiting and fighting with one another about how many different sexes they are and who's more promiscuous, men or women, who's more victimized, while we sit here and we fight about trivial matters, we are dancing on the deck of the fucking Titanic while the rulers are digging a hole in the hull deeper and deeper and wider and wider. And what the fuck do we do? We talk about Harry Styles and all of the tabloid conjecture and Hollywood bullshit. We've got to figure this out, gentlemen. We're in the 13th hour. We don't have any more time. Wasting time worrying about hypergamy and women's nature and all of this thing. This is the best time in the history of America to not be saddled down with something like a relationship or a female. Instead of worrying about those things, brush yourself up on Agenda 21. Watch a couple of videos of the World Economic Forum and see what kind of plans that they have for your life while you're online searching for ways to become more high value. For who? Everything that we hold dear is being threatened. The only way that evil can be successful is if good men do nothing. What are we going to do? What are we going to